Hey everybody, welcome to Hit Rewind. We are in the year 1989. We're introducing a new segment, sort of. It's also kind of a return of an old segment we used to do. Actually, just not a segment, a show. Called Comics on Infinite Earths, where we picked a very specific storyline or major event in comic history and discussed it. Well, this time we're discussing all the major events of that year. So 1989 is our first segment back. I'm your host, Michael. John's on the other side.
Hey.
Boy, you can tell I'm not feeling well because that took all the energy to say that. I came home early, everybody. I was a little sick, and I just woke up. So, I apologize if I'm a little disoriented. So, let's start off with the independent stuff in the comic book world. Not much really has happened yet. We are introducing ourselves to a ton of new labels, most which I don't remember, but the three that I do, Caliber, Continuum, and Blackthorn were kind of the guys trying to compete. It's amazing that Dark Horse is, as far as I know, the only company from this independent boom that survived.
Yeah, especially, well, it actually, it's not that surprising because they did kind of get smart and early on because they got the Aliens franchise and released a bunch of those comics. So because what was it? They had Alien, they had Predator, I know that. But
right, they signed a deal with Fox, and Star Wars would come a couple years later. But they weren't the only ones. People just forget the Planet of the Apes had to come back, which was a Marvel series, and that was licensed out by some independent company. I can't remember, but it was terrible. There was Alien Nation by that same company, and neither one of them really took off. They even had a crossover, Alien Nation and Planet of the Apes, which makes no sense now.
I did not know about that, but that sounds absolutely insane.
Yeah. A lot of companies do this now, and they were doing it then. I remember Now Comics. Do you recall that company?
No, that one doesn't. I might recognize something that they released, but as a company itself, no, that doesn't ring a bell.
The only independent thing that they created themselves that was successful in any way was Ralph Snart. But they had licensed Ghostbusters, Married with Children was a comic book series, Fright Night, Terminator, Green Hornet. There's a few others, but that was like their big thing, was licensing out. They were trying to do what Dark Horse was doing, but I think they overspent and they on the licenses and just created shit art, and that just killed them.
Oh well, that's always the issue with the indie comics for most of them. For a very long time was the art. I've never liked the art in some things. Like you're talking about some indie things. James Barr's The Crow came out. Was debuted this year, and I've never been able to get into that series. I love the movie.
Yeah,
and we've spoken about those on another podcast. But I've never liked any of the comics. And I always kind of jump in, anytime I can find like a trade or something like that, I'll jump in and read some, and then I always just kind of go, oh, this was a mistake.
Yeah, the biggest problem is unless it is done, the art and writing is by the same guy, you are rarely ever going to see a good independent comic from this time period because either they paid a lot for the writer, they paid a lot for the license, or they paid a lot for the artist, and they just don't match up. I mean, Image Comics, which we discussed in a few episodes, is the king of that. Oh, you got this amazing artist. Oh, you're letting him write. Did you see if he could write first? Oh, it's self-published, so it doesn't matter. And that was a big curse, and they were really, really late. Whereas the independent comics, I'll say this, at least they were on time, even if it was subpar.
Well, of course, that's always the thing, is especially with Image, a couple of strong people, and then you also had Rob Liefeld.
Yeah. Over in DC Comics, we have the introduction of two imprints, Piranha Press, which I don't remember at all. I remember the name, but I don't remember what they did. But the big one was Elseworlds, which would go on for quite some time. I don't think they do Elseworlds anymore. I haven't paid attention to DC Comics in a while with their new stuff. They stopped doing Elseworlds, right?
Yeah, to my knowledge, they did, but for really Elseworlds, as I recall, it was never officially named that until, God, what was it, the 90s?
Well, the first one that actually carried that name was in '89 with Gotham by Gaslight.
Well, I know. I'm trying to think because I remember them referring to they had a whole series of these annuals in the '90s that were labeled Elseworlds. I kind of want to say that it didn't Gotham by Gaslight just get released as its own thing.
Maybe it's a concept that it got introduced. I can't remember. I read that comic in forever, but it's funny is, you know what, I don't think that they had that logo and that name like we know now. Like, they remember they had the little certain icon underneath Elseworlds, and that was like common for that. I feel like it was trying to make up for the fact that we no longer had, you know, Earth 2 and all the alternate universes that we had known for DC before Crisis.
Yeah, because that was what, Crisis on Infinite Earths, that was 87, wasn't it?
86.
86.
I have it actually sitting right next to me.
Yeah, well, it's because like shortly thereafter they relaunched like Superman with Man of Steel, and all that. So yeah, it's like they had completely erased all this stuff and just condensed everything into a singular universe. So yeah, you had, if you're going to tell any kind of alternate stories, yeah, they decided to, you know, I think Gotham by Gaslight is a retro thing,
right? Steampunk, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying not those steampunks. Yeah, it's a steampunk. It was guy who did Hellboy's jam, wasn't it?
Might have been Mignola. I can't remember now. I haven't read it in so long.
It's like, I'm pretty sure it was, because I seem to remember that it having his art style. I don't necessarily know if he wrote it or not. It's been a while since I've read it.
Too lazy to look it up. Fine, I'll go look it up.
but like I said, I think retroactively, I think it was labeled Elseworlds. I want to say Elseworlds came later, because then there's all sorts of stories that are now under that imprint, like The Nail. I think is
that's a really good series. It says Mignola. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it's the first Nail is amazing. I think the second one, yeah. But God, those when we get to those that year, I definitely would love to talk about some of those annuals.
Yeah, I have both of the Nail miniseries. Trying to think, there was another one where they strip them of all their powers, and only the technology guys are left. The problem is they're severely outweighed by the technology bad guys, and it's just a brutal battle to the end.
Yeah, it's like, and I think there was like there was a couple of them where it's like, revisiting an old idea from like the golden age of Silver Age comics, where it was, here's Superman 2 and Batman 2 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think they kind of like
and I remember Red Sun was a huge one, where what if Superman had landed in Russia instead of America? So Elseworlds held on for a really long time. Piranha Press, you got me. I'm guessing it's like their super independent label before like Vertigo took over.
Yeah, well, Vertigo. Yeah, actually, you're right. Vertigo didn't necessarily appear, because there's one series that I know of. I know it debuted that year that I associate with Vertigo, but yeah, I don't believe it started as Vertigo.
The big event of the year over in DC was Invasion. We did an episode of Comics on Infinite Earths about that really early in the beginning, about just an alien race coming to our planet and taking over, and they're fighting. But they introduced the concept of a metagene, which in a way was like some fine line between what Marvel was doing with the mutant gene, that you were just kind of born with it. It was like a cosmic choice in the DC universe of who could and who couldn't get powers, triggered by certain events. I think they've ditched the idea now, but at the time it was kind of like, oh, well, you're trying to make this make sense.
Well, that actually kind of sounds like a cross between the X gene, but also a little bit of the Inhuman, thing with the Terrigen Mist.
Oh yeah.
Where it's, you have to have it inside you, and then whatever happens activates it. Because I would assume that's why, getting struck by lightning and after being doused with chemicals turns Barry Allen into the Flash, where none of that. I don't give a shit about your fake science. None of that would have caused him to turn into the Flash.
And the next thing is Grant Morrison really breaks through this year with taking B-level, or no, it's not even B-level. I'm being generous. Probably C or D-level characters, Animal Man and Doom Patrol, debuting with those two series, and those basically made his name of taking like kind of cheesy old school characters and really juicing them up with crazy ideas and lots of wonderful characters.
Oh man, the Animal Man run is amazing. I love that series. I kind of came to it somewhat backwards though, because I had first read stuff from the Jeff Lemire Animal Man series from the New 52.
Yeah.
And that kind of intrigued me because I'd heard about how great the Animal Man Grant Morrison run was, and I'd go, okay, I'll give this a chance. Grant Morrison for me is kind of hit or miss because he gets out there, and I mean the man will swing for the fences, and when it works, I think it, like at least when it works for me, it's 100% amazing. When it doesn't work, it is the most unintelligible garbage.
Yeah, why the same thing? Not with Alan Moore, but damn it, who's the other guy that's like Alan Moore that now everybody hates because Brent is a huge sexist?
Warren
Ellis. Yeah, they both have these huge ideas, and if I can't connect, I'm done. But if I can, am I in for luck?
Yeah, and that's it. Like, I've tried to read his Doom Patrol, and I don't hate it, but I can't. I've never been able to really get connected.
Yeah,
with
the TV series really is the only accessible version for the general public. It took a '60s kind of a camp series, and Grant Morrison made it more high-minded. And I think if it wasn't for the critically acclaimed run that he does on this, we don't get the TV show, because the following Doom Patrol runs no one remembers, no one gives a shit about. It's the same thing like with Swamp Thing. No one remembers after Alan Moore really left.
Well, I don't know. I've heard good things about the Gerard Way Doom Patrol series.
Oh, okay. I have not. I haven't so far out of it. Wait, Gerard Way, is that the guy from My Chemical Romance?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sold. I'll read it. I'll read it then.
Yeah, I've heard lots of praise for that, so it's probably good. But yeah, it's like I can see what you mean, where it's like it's definitely a grouping of characters that, if not done right, would never work. You would not. It really takes a fine hand to craft like the surrealness of those characters together.
Yeah. We have the debut of Legends of the Dark Knight. Why? Because 89 is the year of Batman. We all lost our fucking minds. Batman was everywhere. That one specific logo. You see it, you know it's from the Tim Burton movie.
Oh, yeah. God, I know I've read some of these, but it's like Legends of the Dark Knight was the, like self-contained stories.
Right, it was an anthology that bounced around in his timeline so that they weren't stuck to whatever was going on, which would eventually, I believe, would fail. Like, towards the end when the sales were sucking, they started incorporating into the regular Batman universe, and I think eventually it got shut down and turned to Shadow of the Bat. My 12-year-old brain was not ready for this sophisticated, more mature storytelling, and I think they aimed it incorrectly. I think they should have focused on saying, this is more of a, like a mature line, a Vertigo line. And they should have, because it doesn't take place in the normal DC universe the way that we were, the continuity. And I feel like if they had pitched it as more of a direct market instead of, I found my copy in the grocery store, that kind of thing, I think it would have done better.
Yeah, because wasn't the first arc like the one with Venom with the drug?
No, it was Shaman. Shaman. Shaman, I think is how you say it. No, Venom wouldn't be for a long time, I don't think. Shaman, it was just more like what Grant Morrison was doing. It was just very sophisticated, and I just remember it was plastic sealed. It had a poster inside of it, and I always remember the back cover was the movie Shocker advertisement. But I just didn't get into it. I never bought another issue of it.
Yeah. See, obviously, I've not read too many of those. It's like I guess I'm at least happy that I got one of the issues or one of the storylines correct from it, and not just no, that was just Detective Comics or whatever.
Yeah. And 89 is the reason why I got back in comics. 89, not sorry, Batman's 89. Oh my god, let me try that again. 89's Batman is the reason why I got back into comics. This is when I started reading the story of the many deaths of Batman, one of the first storylines that really took place after the death of Robin, the death in the family. and it really sucked me in, and I started reading Spider-Man again. If it wasn't for that movie, I don't know where I would be with comic books. And I saw that movie 3 times. That's the most I've ever seen any movie in the theater.
Well, it's like, I guess if that's the case, Tim Drake Robin didn't debut this year, did he?
He did at the very, very end. Because after Many Deaths of Batman, we have Lonely Place of Dying, which is really dealing with the fallout from Jason Todd's death. And Tim Drake's saying, Batman's losing it. He can't. He needs someone else to balance him out, and that he needs a Robin, and Batman wants nothing to do with it. And they take on Two-Face, and this is before he really becomes Robin that we know. He jumps into the old costume and helps save the day, but then Batman wants nothing to do with it. But Nightwing convinces him to at least lead him into some positive path.
Yeah, Tim Drake's always kind of been my Robin.
Oh, same here. Always.
It's like yeah, I didn't really start reading Batman as my own thing. Because I did read some Batman because my dad had had some collections that had various comics, Batman and Superman from the 50s. Actually,
yeah,
from the 30s,
my dad had the same thing where they digest sized, like the little tiny ones.
Oh no, it's huge.
Really? Okay.
Huge full book, thing. From stories from the 30s all the way to the 70s. Okay. And so at each one, so you can kind of see how these stories evolved over time. And so it's I do a lot of original Robin, Nightwing, but it wasn't until I started reading these comics for my own that Tim Drake was Robin, and I always kind of connected with him because it always seemed like he was going to be the best person to become Batman.
Right. And it wasn't born out of tragedy the way that Dick was. And Jason was always kind of a broken kid who was difficult to control, whereas Tim turned out to be just such a beacon of hope and control. And by this time, Batman's really starting to fry. Everything that everybody loves about Batman now, I can't stand. That he's basically a sociopath who pretends to be Bruce Wayne. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like something I'm interested. I'm more interested in Batman's family around him. And as we record this, the entire comic book world that's shitty is losing their fucking mind because Tim Drake's bisexual. Oh no, that ruins him as a superhero forever. I'm never buying your comics again.
I am shocked. Shocked, I tell you. Okay, not that shocked.
Yeah, come on.
He's, you know what? One, if you really care that much about it, then don't read it.
Yeah.
It's very, if you have to be a shitty human being who can't accept that a character can be bisexual, you can stop reading.
Yeah. Also, you have 30 years worth of the comics to go back and visit before.
Yeah, and here's the thing. For all you know, that was a plan, from the start that many of the X characters who were coded very gay or bisexual for a very long time.
Yeah.
And you just didn't realize it because you were a dumb child.
I can see someone typing right now, everybody knows that Tim Drake's all about the pussy. What is this bullshit? I'm not reading the comics anymore. Your woke bullshit is ruining comic books forever.
I'll still read them. I buy floppies every week. Or every week that something good comes out.
I haven't bought a single issue in forever. I can't do that. I can't do that 15 minutes of a television show and then wait a month for the next 15 minutes. I need the whole shebang.
Oh, that's where all the fun lies.
I know.
When you get those cliffhangers, and it's like, I will say this: I'm still pissed off that I've been waiting 3 years now. Actually, I think more than that. I could be wrong, but at least 3 years for the return of Saga, because they left you on a hell of a cliffhanger.
Are you serious? It's been that long since we did that episode? Wow.
I think we did it. We did it while it was still. Early on in that, but still, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna take a 2-year break.
Yeah, but that is a torturous thing, especially with indie comics. I mean, still don't even know if Battle Chasers is done. I have no clue.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would have to look that up.
So the other things I want to mention before we move on to Marvel is this is the premiere of Emerald Dawn. This is another one that I started buying immediately. No, let me correct myself. I missed the first miniseries. It was the next year when I started collecting Emerald Dawn 2. And this kind of goes back to the early days of Hal Jordan and kind of overhauls his origin before we launch into his new series where he's much older. And I think it's fantastic. There's an artist named M.D. Bright who at the time was a rising star. He would do, I think this is his first real big thing. He would do G.I. Joe, I think, at the same time. And his big thing was Quantum and Woody, which would come a decade later. And then he just quit. He started doing Christian comics. And I'm not reading those. I'm sorry. I'm not going to.
I know I've read some of the Quantum and Woody stuff. I like the premise, but I've never really liked it.
Yeah, but I love his art. He has the kind of faces the way that Kevin Maguire on Justice League International would do. Very expressive, very fun to look at.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but interesting art, like I said, and like I said, the concept was fun, but I don't know.
Yeah. We have Hawkworld debuting, and this is yet another reiteration of the whole Hawkman. I don't know what they're even doing. I feel like every few years they did this with Aquaman forever too, before they figured out what to do with them. This isn't working. Let's reboot everything. But this time, instead of going with the Earthbound Carter Hall, we go to the planet of the Hawk people, and it's more like a space cop kind of thing. And it was really critically acclaimed. I've read it. It's fine. I want to say it's Ostrander, the creator of Suicide Squad, and Tim Truman that did the artwork on it. And it's kind of sad they ditched a lot of what that was doing, but they still, like... I feel like with the big event with... What was that? Adam Strange and Green Lantern, where they were fighting... I even have on the books. But they brought Hawkworld into it, where it's big intergalactic battle.
Oh, it's like the Rand Thanagar.
Thank you. That's what it was. Yeah, and I believe the Hawkworld thing was reintroduced after New 52, where they made it possible that Carter Hall was from this planet, but when he died and was reborn, he found himself on Earth or something like that. I get confused along the way.
Yeah, I could never follow the Hawkman, Hawkgirl.
Yeah, because their armor
story.
is like Thangarian from their world, so it's magical or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like they're aliens, but they're reborn as humans, but they're still also aliens, and they have wings, except when they don't, and they need to wear harnesses that have...
Yeah. It's the one character DC has never really solidified. Even during that Jeff Johns run, which is fantastic. I think it's the best Hawkman's ever been written. It still feels like they're constantly like, well, let's bring back some of that old nonsense that we threw away in the first place to make it make... Oh. Yeah, that's the problem with DC with their constant reboots.
Yeah, I think that's always kind of why I'm a little bit more of a Marvel guy, is even as much as Marvel will kind of reboot their own characters on occasion, it's usually fairly soft reboots. It just becomes new status quo shifts as opposed to, okay, we're just dropping everything, forget what you knew, here it is now.
Yeah, or they'll introduce a new character like they did with Danny Ketch, Johnny Blaze still exists, but this is a new Ghost Rider, so that they don't erase that timeline, but they create a new one or whatever.
Yeah, and it's still, the old ones are still just valid, and those characters will pop up every now and then.
All right, so the final DC entry is Justice League International is a critically acclaimed, solid seller, but they decide that they're going to split it up. They're going to change the title back to Justice League America, but they introduce a second team, so they're no longer international, now Justice League Europe, drawn by Bart Sears and the same writing team as Justice League International, and it's a lot of fun. It's just not as good, I think, because I don't really care for the Europe team the way I do for the American team. And that's because I'm America First racist. That's it. I knew it this whole time.
I don't think I've ever read any of those.
If I remember correctly, it's Metamorpho, Power Girl, Flash, Wonder Woman, Elongated Man, Animal Man, Captain Atom, I think. Yeah, that's the team, and they're just not as appealing as the goofballs over in Justice League America.
Yeah, because by that time, wasn't that the Justice League that was the Blue Beetle?
Right, yeah, it's Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Guy Gardner. I mean, they're right there. You got your solid three. We have
Fire and Ice,
and then Batman, Captain Marvel, Martian Manhunter, and I want to say wait, I can't remember if
oh wait, I think wasn't it that it was Martian Manhunter gone and then replaced by Bloodstone or whatever?
That was much later. That was during the time right before Doomsday. So that would be a few years off. Yeah,
I know that was that character was in with the Doomsday stuff, but it was still Martian Manhunter just on.
Oh yes, you're correct. I remember that now when they finally reveal. There's a character I'm missing from the Justice League Europe, and I can't remember the name, but it's the Russian armored guy.
Colossus?
No, that's Marvel. No, it's like Rocket Red or something like that. He was part of it, and then there was like a female one that was dressed like you know what? Hold on. You go ahead.
Maxima. Were you thinking of Maxima?
I remember Maxima, but there was one that she dressed it like her name was she was French and she looked like a giant squirrel or something. I can't remember.
I don't know.
It's been so long since I read it, but that is it for the DC Universe stuff. On to Marvel.
Actually, I'm going to give you one more DC because it was not mentioned.
What?
The Sandman.
Oh, is this the debut?
Yeah, Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which wasn't... I looked that up, and apparently it wasn't part of Vertigo until like, what, Vertigo's 93 or something?
Okay.
But like the first couple of issues, first little while of it, it was just like, I don't know, DC Presents or something like that. But it was, Neil Gaiman's series started in 89. And it is phenomenal. It's about, it's a heady concept where, if I remember what the elevator pitch is, it's effectively the Lord of Dreams has to learn to grow or else he will die, or something to that effect. And it's effectively about Dream, who is not just the Lord of the Realm of Dreams, he is the very aspect of our collective unconsciousness. And he ends up having to go through all these sorts of trials after getting kidnapped on accident for 70-something years. And, in that time, his realm has collapsed. Some of his major artifacts are stolen from him. He has to go and recollect these things. And then ultimately has to go and seek out some of the escaped nightmares and try to reconsolidate his power. But in doing so, it ultimately does lead to his ultimate destruction. Or does it? Because these are abstract concepts and made human. And it's a phenomenal series. Certainly has my favorite take on Death, who is this kind of cute, fun goth girl who when I go, that is who I want to have. Not because she's drawn as an attractive person, but she seems very nice. It's not this sullen Grim Reaper, asshole who's going to take your soul to the next bound. It's kind of like, come on, let's go, or might have a joke with you or something, have empathy for your plight. It's like a nice, it's like someone that you want to have on your side.
Real quickly, Crimson Fox was the character that was part of not the original, but she was part of Justice League Europe, and she died pretty quickly, so I guess it doesn't matter because she wasn't part of the original team, so I'm going to shut up now.
But okay.
Oh, no, I forgot one thing. I didn't write it down. I just remembered because you said Sandman. Shadow Strikes debuts, which is finally taking the character back to his original origins in the 1930s, because Bill Sienkiewicz had taken it in 1987 and made it hip and updated in the 80s or whatever. Everybody had huge shoulder pads. And it was critically acclaimed but not well received by the fans of Shadow, so DC ended that and introduced Shadow Strikes, which is a good old-fashioned pulpy punch, just classic fighting style in the 30s. And it was more successful with the fans, but it eventually died off after 3 years.
How'd you pronounce Bill Sienkiewicz's last name?
Sienkiewicz? Is that how?
Yeah, Sienkiewicz.
Oh, fuck. Okay, sorry. I'm a Philistine. I like to fill. Go ahead.
Okay. It's okay. It's like if you've never heard it spoken aloud.
Yeah.
Believe me, I've only know because I've heard it spoken aloud. Last 2 years or so.
I'm glad I didn't introduce him on stage. Now coming to the stage, and then he, boo, get off the stage, loser. All right, sorry. Now finally we are going to Marvel Comics, and I'll shut my pile until it's my turn.
All right. Okay, I guess I'll go with the biggest, massive, headache-inducing thing, Inferno.
Which was huge for me because I only read the Spider-Man version of it.
Well, that's just it. It's like it actually does start in '88, but it took a good chunk of '89 too. An event that basically spanned all the X books at the time. Basically, in which the hellish dimension of Limbo kind of starts to take over New York. There's two main storylines that go with this. The first one is in New Mutants, which follows Magic, Ileana Rasputin, who's the current ruler of Limbo. She's trying to take back her realm because it's starting to be her minions have gotten taken over by this tech organic virus. Don't ask. And they're trying. They've been usurping her power, and with this virus, they're now a much more dangerous threat to her. So the New Mutants get together and they're fighting her, and it ends up resulting in Ileana Rasputin being regressed back to the 7-year-old child that she was.
Yeah.
Before she got kidnapped by the demons in hell literally in one panel of the comic, and then returned as a teenage girl in the next. So we now get this reverse where she's been this teenager for the last couple of years. Now she's back to being like a 7-year-old child, and all of the things that, like this traumatic childhood that she ended up enduring, has now been effectively erased. So, yay!
I feel like that was I'm pretty sure this is when Hobgoblin made a deal with God, what was his name? Snide or something like that?
There's Nastier, and I don't think Belasco was doing anything in that. I'm trying to think of some of the other characters, but
it was Madeleine Pryor, right?
Oh yeah. Madeleine Pryor was the main villain from the other half of the arc.
And there was Mr. Sinister. But there's somebody else, whatever. He made a deal to become get real powers, whatever. So he got turned into a real demon. And that would run for quite some time. His storyline is kind of confusing, but I remember that being a big deal in the Spider-Man universe, is now that he was incredibly powerful now, and he didn't need gadgets in his costume anymore. He was a real monster.
Yeah, well, it's like, I think also somewhere around there, the Demogoblin also, ended up appearing.
Yeah, you're right. I remember that.
Yeah, because I think that was... Maybe it was from that event, because maybe it was also because there's the Spider-Man doppelganger that had the weird insect eyes and razor claws.
Okay, and 4 arms, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think that might have came out of Inferno as well. I could be wrong, but I want to say that happened. But as you kind of preluded. Over in X Factor and Uncanny X-Men, you had Madeleine Pryor, wife of Cyclops, mother of baby Cable. She ends up discovering that she is not only a clone of Jean Grey, but she ends up losing her mind, makes a deal with these demons, becomes the Goblin Queen, and tries to bring hell on Earth by stealing and trying to sacrifice babies, including baby Cable. And this brings the two X teams together, because at this time everyone actually thinks that the X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men, are dead, because during the fall of the mutants there was a big fight with the demon entity, and it resulted in them being killed, but then they got resurrected and given the chance to keep fighting, and they kind of get cloaked from all electronic things. It's like one of the boons that they're given for their service. God, that's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Continuity.
This is the last storyline my friend Ken read before he completely quit comics.
Oh my God. Well, this led to what's referred to as the Outback era, where they're
Right. Fuck, I forgot about that.
They're taking over a Reaver base in the outback, and they're basically running, Black Ops out of that location.
I did not like that time period of X-Men, but I remember that being huge for some reason.
Yeah, so the two teams eventually get together. They finally realize, oh shit, they're not dead, and it's like, how dare you not pick up a phone and call us? Can't you see we're X Factor? We're pretty damn noticeable. X-Men, you could have called us.
Yeah,
but they eventually do stop and kill Madeleine Pryor. Mr. Sinister is a big character in this because he's all about the clones, and he's trying to create. Well, did sit out because he wanted to effectively create Cable. So he cloned a perfect clone of Jean Grey to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it all kind of went bad for him, because I think he dies in this arc, if I remember right. He gets blown apart by Cyclops.
Maybe.
But
this is when we get Archangel, right?
Oh, Archangel's been around at this point for a while.
Was that during Fall of the Mutants?
Yeah, that was Fall of the Mutants, where he got his wings amputated.
Yeah, but when did he...
No, I'm sorry, no. That was Mutant Massacre, was the wings. Fall of the Mutants involved him, but he was on a different thing. I think he kills Cameron Hodge during that.
Okay. It's so confusing, the timelines.
It's trying to remember, because there's... At this point, they've... Almost every year, there's a new X crossover. So it's hard to remember every event all the time. But eventually, the X-Men win. Everyone kind of goes off their separate ways. But the other team, Excalibur, does tie into this, kind of. You have Rachel Gray, who's Cyclops and Jean Grey's daughter from the alternate future. They did an X-Men movie about it. Days of Future Past.
Uh-huh.
She's their daughter in that, who is a little distraught by the fact that there's a baby that her father has had, and it's not a girl. And it's with another woman, because mom is dead, to her knowledge. So, well, for a while. So, she doesn't technically exist. But she gets a little psychic blast that that Cable's in danger, but she quickly rushes off to New York, and then almost gets married to a demon.
Oh, nice.
And that's pretty much their entire thing. Is just they get to New York, and they get really sidetracked because it's Excalibur, and Excalibur is weird and goofy and fun. And speaking of that, Excalibur, their epic cross time caper begins at the end of the year, and we did my fiance and I did a episode for Comics on Infinite Earth about this. So if you want to hear the whole story, check that out. But in fact, basically, while escaping a Nazi-controlled reality, the team ends up stuck in a dragon-powered train, going across a multitude of different alternate realities. And it is goofy and fun and wildly uneven at times. But watching Nightcrawler get laid is probably one of the highlights of the whole thing.
Oh, boy.
Well, that and the opening arc in which you have Prince. I forget which prince it was now, but one of the British princes is he's a medieval knight, but he's carrying a Walkman. He's rocking shades.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I really liked Excalibur. It was a little too weird for me, but I love that cast. I think Captain Britain, it's really his only shining moment for a very long time.
Well, it's like Claremont and Alan Davis knew what to do with Captain Britain. Was you take this character who is a kind of a dick, and you could basically, it's like, even though he's a scientist and everyone forgets that part of it, he's a fucking meathead.
Yeah. And,
kind of seems like, he's perfectly willing to punch his way out of any problem. So what do? Every single moment they can, they lay him flat. They always have someone there beating the shit out of him to kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, it's not going to just be brute force that solves this thing.
Do you prefer his old costume where his hair stuck out and he had that rod, or do you like his more, the more Captain America style costume?
I kind of prefer the little more Captain America style costume.
There's something goofy about his old one I like.
Well, he's got that weird. It's not so much a face mask; it just looks like a veil over his face.
Yeah, but it looks just like the Captain Canuck costume, and that's super obscure if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But it's almost a replica of that one.
All right, so last little things for the world of X-Men. We have in Uncanny 244. We have the introduction of Jubilee, the girl who can shoot colorful micro explosions from her fingers.
Unlike Polka Dot Man.
Let's see. This is also, as I said, the Outback era. It actually comes to an end because the Reavers, the cyborg mercenaries, finally try to reclaim their base, and pretty much everybody has to escape because they're kicking the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Like Wolverine gets crucified.
I remember being scared of these guys. This is a much darker era than I remember it being, but there was the Brood, and there's something really strange, especially with Mark Silvestri's art on this. The way he draws the Reavers makes them terrifying. There's some kind of weird Mad Max, Inhuman disease kind of, because they're hybrid people, and it's
yeah. Well, there's also goop. It was like a lot of them are kind of creepy looking, but you also have the guy who's like half tank.
Yeah, that bothered me for some reason. It reminded, what's that movie where the guy's half, he rides around oh shit, it's an old not full moon, Eliminators. Do you remember this movie?
No, I don't.
Oh, it was an 86 movie, not from Full Moon. It's the company they had before that, but I'll remember one day. But the guy rides around in a tank because his body's cybernetic. It's almost as Chris Claremont saw that movie. He's like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm about to say, wait, Claremont was Claremont was still
yeah, he was on it for a long ass time.
Yeah, but it's it ends up they go through one of the other boons that they got from Roma, the daughter of Merlin, who all this stuff is kind of her thing. They get a thing called the Siege Perilous. Basically, it's this gem that becomes a gateway, and when you step through it, it effectively kind of changes who you are. Rewrite your identity, and most of the people kind of get their identities, changed up a little bit. Nothing really happens to Dazzler. She just kind of goes through and is still Dazzler. But Storm becomes a teen girl, and Psylocke, through Mojo and Jim Lee becoming the artist and really wanting to draw a hot ninja lady, Psylocke becomes an Asian woman. And
I'll take that version. Honestly, I'll take that version.
It's awesome, but it's like, because that's kind of how I've always seen her. Because when I kind of started picking up comics,
yeah, I saw her when she was fluffy and boring. So,
well, by that point, by the Siege Perilous things, she was a much tougher fighter. It's just, yeah, Jim Lee wanted to draw a hot ninja lady, so Psylocke becomes the assassin for was the Mandarin for a moment, and then they try to explain it by brain swap with an assassin named Quanon, who ends up with some of Betsy Braddock's memories, and it's very confusing. And then they just killed off Quanon, and now she's back, and she's officially Psylocke, while Betsy Braddock is Captain Britain.
Oh, she took over. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's the new current Excalibur run has her taking over as Captain Britain.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, actually, there's one more X-Men. Wolverine number 10. It's Claremont with John. I'm terrible with names. I can say Sienkiewicz, but I can't say. Was it Buscema?
Buscema. I don't know.
Buscema. Yeah. But it's one of the most iconic Wolverine stories, where it's the death of Silver Fox by Sabretooth's hands on Logan's birthday, which then it leads to this huge fight between the two, and then it's also, while this is happening it's Wolverine's birthday in present day, and he's in Madripoor, and he's looking for something. looking for these guys who are doing some bad stuff, and he comes across them killed by Sabretooth, who's basically just kind of going, I'm the only one allowed to kill you on this day. So you have this entire one little story that sets up an entire chain in which effectively every year on Wolverine's birthday, Sabretooth comes in to fuck him up.
Tradition.
It's just what he does every year is, I'm going to go and mess up something in Wolverine's life. I'm going to either directly fight him, or I'm going to mess up whatever it is that he's doing. And whatever it is, this is the day I'm going to fuck with your life. More than usual.
Yeah.
Now, we had the Acts of Vengeance.
Oh, God, do I love this. I even have the trade of it somewhere around here.
Yeah, which it is a crossover event, but it's not really a crossover event, because Loki hatches this plan to defeat all the heroes by getting them effectively to fight villains that they don't normally fight. And, of course, it fails. But instead of really being a crossover, it's more of just kind of like a state of the Marvel Universe for a little while.
Yeah.
It shows up in a whole bunch of issues, and they don't necessarily relate too much. It's just kind of like, hey, here's an interesting idea. Let's have, instead of Fantastic Four fighting Doctor Doom shows up in an issue of Power Pack.
That's the weirdest. Yeah, I remember they threw the controller into Captain America. He never fought him before. So the thing is trying to mix up the villains, because by then Spider-Man had known all of his villains' weaknesses and he was easy to defeat them, whatever. But they change it up. They give him other people's villains, like they gave him Titania, I think, is one of them. The Wizard, Goliath. Guys that he had never fought before. But in his storyline, they gave him the Captain Universe powers, which pop up like once a decade or something in the Marvel Universe. And he became cosmic. And he just eliminates all of them so quickly. And Magneto wants to know if he's a mutant because his powers are changing suddenly. And he goes to test him by getting the Tri-Sentinel. He takes 3 Sentinels and combines them into one. And has him fight it, and he's like, nah, there's no way that he could possibly have this many powers all at once. It's usually just one, instead of like 5 or 6 new powers, and leaves him alone. But there's a moment where he really thought that he was he actually fought Spider-Man for a while, too, which is interesting.
Well, yeah. Spider-Man's always kind of been tied to the idea of being a mutant, even though, it's the radioactive power thing.
Right.
So they had like a whole mutagenic crisis thing or something like that with Beast of the X-Men. Or am I just thinking of the cartoon? Well, I know it was a series, but am I just thinking of the cartoon?
I can't remember.
Beast? Anyway, but yeah, and that's the thing. It's like actually, I'll just talk about it right now. Damage Control, which had 2 miniseries that came out, both by Dwayne McDuffie. It follows the people who deal with the cleanup after superhero battles, and it's a comedy series. There's there's a little bit of I don't want to say espionage, but it's more like a bureaucratic, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. story, but with a lot more humor.
And they tried to do a pilot for this, but NBC had beat them to the punch and created a series that was very similar plot-wise. I can't remember the name of it, though. I had Alan Tudyk in it.
Yeah, I know that. I remember that happened, and I was a little pissed off because I had read the first Damage Control series by that point, and I thought it was great. And I hadn't checked out until actually literally just a couple of days ago, hadn't checked out the second one, which, interesting enough, is an Acts of Vengeance crossover.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because they're dealing with the Wrecking Crew, even though they're not superheroes and they don't really fight anybody. Although there is a great bit at the end of it where they get a building because they made a good amount of money, but it's they can't really afford it, so they end up selling it, and it's got a huge DC on the top, and they end up selling it to a company that had a very successful movie out that summer. So very rarely do you get the two companies praising each other. I mean, there's always been the, Stanley, the distinguished competition stuff, but an issue of a Marvel comic that directly says, good job, you guys. You guys did very well this summer. But yeah, I strongly recommend Damage Control because that's a hell of a series. Although I kind of regret that there's like one more miniseries, and then there was like a 1 years later when they had the World War Hulk series that they brought it back briefly. But it's like it feels like really it's a strong enough concept to keep around more than just sporadic pop-ins. Like hell, Brian Michael Bendis would have written a hell of a series for this.
Yeah, definitely. He was great with dialogue.
Yeah, so check them out. They're really good. Let's see. Atlantis Attacks.
Boring. I read that graphic novel, and I did not like it.
Yeah, it's another crossover. Took place in a variety of annuals and some standalones.
There's always two major events, and one was always an X-Men, and one was more Avengers-oriented, and this is the more Avengers-oriented one. Yeah,
although it did cross into the X titles a bit. But yeah, basically these underwater empires attempt to resurrect the Elder God set. They reforge the magical serpent crown. They kidnap some superheroines and some adjacent women to be the brides of the serpent and try to turn humanity to serpent people. And
yeah, this is the reinjection basically for Submariner as a hero who would get his series the next year.
Yeah, and that's about it. I mean, it's not Atlantis never attacks in the series, really. It's a very misleading title, and yeah, that's what it was. Something better that happened is John Byrne's Sensational She-Hulk.
Yes, this is John Byrne. What happened to John Byrne? I was just thinking about this yesterday. He was everywhere for so many decades, and then he wandered off to do his own thing with Next Men, and I haven't heard from him since.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but oh my god, Byrne gave us Deadpool years before Deadpool ever was the fourth wall breaking, wisecracking with the mouth. Like, she is constantly breaking the fourth wall. All the storytelling conventions. Like, one of the best gags has She-Hulk ripping through. She's trying to escape Dr. Bomb, so she rips through the page and runs through the ad on the other side. remember when they'd have those ads for like, oh yeah, here's this mail order company.
Yeah, or Tops or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can buy all these old comics. Literally, it's a page with just bullshit comic labels, names and stuff like that she's running through. It's such an extremely clever joke. I think there's also one of my favorite panels where she has to get dressed at one point. So it ends up being like an entire, white, the panels are like just segmented above and below. So you have like her head and then maybe her legs, and her naked body is effectively covered up by a white panel. And it's just like, this is a code approved book, right? Okay, well you need to do something because I got to take a shower and get dressed before I can go to this place. So it's just this page or 2 pages of this segmented thing. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's so weird because John Byrne is not known for being funny. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, and he does a very good job with this because it's probably one of the best things. It's also probably the cheesecakey sexiest that She-Hulk has actually ever been.
Yeah,
because he draws some sexy ladies.
I'm trying to think. His run, I'm trying to remember, it started on Iron Fist, and then he moved over to, I want to say Fantastic Four, he did Avengers, he did Captain America, something else in there I'm forgetting. He did X-Men, of course, for a very long time. He did the reboot of Wonder Woman and Superman. I think this is when he finally came back after doing those two, and he had done this and Submariner, and like I said, he was just the hottest of hot, and then just vamoose, and it's so strange. I mean, he just got tired of it.
Yeah, it's a shame because if I have to look up some more of his, I would have to say later stuff because this is a lot of fun, and it's like I know I've read some of his X-Men work.
He's not known for comedy, which is why this is so surprising.
Yeah, and like this, it's a brilliant bit. It's kind of a shame that there's a big break in between his run. It's like I think it's like the first 8 or 9 issues, something like that, and then his run jumps back into like issue 30. It's something weird like that where it's just he had it for a little while, and then I know there's some issues with the guy who did Howard the Duck. He jumps in for a little bit, and then there's some other ones that I haven't read. But it's weird that it's segmented like that. But it's one of those things where he definitely knew that the book wasn't selling well, so he's constantly coming up, and on the covers it's always the joke. She-Hulk is talking with him about how can we sell more issues. Okay, well, am I going to have to jump rope naked? It's like, all right, John, we'll do that.
You have to build an account to see what he's working on now. He has a website called Byrne Robotics. I forgot he did the initial run of Alpha Flight as well. Oh
yes, that's right. Because there is a comment about that where they do effectively the same. One of the issues of Alpha Flight is effectively it's a fight in a snowstorm, but there's like dialogue boxes and stuff, and he does something similar in She-Hulk, and she bitches to him about doing it.
He was born in Alberta, and that's his home, so it makes sense why he was created Alpha Flight. Yeah, co-created, I should say.
And I've been reading a good chunk of the Alpha Flight stuff, and I like a good bunch of it. But anyway, What If Volume 2 made its debut?
Yay! The one that I know really well compared to the first.
Yeah, I know this run a lot more than I know the originals, although I've been collecting the original runs lately. But yeah, it's alternate versions of Marvel stories, different takes on the characters, interesting things like what if Punisher was possessed by Venom? What if the Hulk killed Wolverine in their first fight? What if, and one of my favorite ones, what if Rogue had the power of Thor? It's like,
which she almost had. Have you ever read that comic, Avengers Annual number 10, where she fights? Oh my god, that's what's fucking amazing.
And that is actually the whole point of that story is just kind of going, instead of after taking out Captain Marvel, but not draining her, she drains Thor completely, and effectively becomes Thor. Though it does kind of make me wonder though if Thor was as annoying as Carol Danvers was in Rogue's brain.
I'm looking here real quickly. John Byrne really hasn't worked much in the last decade. He kind of ended it at IDW by doing the Angel miniseries, Jurassic Park miniseries, and his own creative thing called Trio and the Highways, and brought X-Men back for 1 year.
Well, I mean, he's living his best life, I hope.
Well, he is probably about 75, so I guess he can retire.
Let's see. What else we got? Oh, West Coast Avengers issues 45 and 46. Okay. In issue 45, we're introduced to the emotionless white version of Vision. And basically, a few issues back, Vision goes crazy and tries to take over the world. It ends up with him getting, he gets beaten, disassembled, and deleted. And so, in getting resurrected, he's now this, he's a blank version of himself. And the key to giving him his personality back is Wonder Man's brain pattern, because that's partially how he was, created in the beginning.
Right.
And Wonder Man decides, you know what? Now that stuff is kind of how I became a villain in the first place, was people messing with my head. And you want to mess with my head, I ain't down for that. And so, at this point, the Vision is now going to be an emotionless dick and not recognize the fact that he and Wanda have children. Or do they? Because that's a plot point that gets confusing and terrible for a very long time. But in issue 46, the greatest superhero team of all time debuts. The Great Lakes Avengers.
I was going to bring up earlier that they introduced Justice League Antarctica around this time. It seems like both companies were thinking goofball characters.
Yeah, now this doesn't have Squirrel Girl in it at the time.
No. Flat Man.
Flat Man, Mr. Immortal, who I did not realize, because I did read that issue. I did not realize how big of a dick he was in the debut. Like, he is insufferable.
Yep.
Like, I'm kind of glad that they kind of shaved off a little bit of those edges a little bit over time, because I don't know. But you have Big Bertha, who's a supermodel by day and super obese hero by night. You have Doorman, who can make portals, and you have Dinosaur, who's a dinosaur woman, and she can fly. And it's a bunch of trash characters. They really, really suck.
Yeah.
But at this point, Hawkeye had quit the Avengers because West Coast Avengers anyway. He quits because U.S. Agent comes in and decides that he's going to be the leader now. So he and Mockingbird had shown up like, "Oh, I'm back, guys," and he's like, they both fuck off and end up coming across these bullshit characters and decide to train them into actually being worthwhile. And let's be honest, it did not work.
No, but it keeps coming back, like every few years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think even Deadpool joined their team for an issue or something like that, and he was like, "You guys are ridiculous," and I know that I am ridiculous.
Yeah, well, he basically just kind of crashes at their pad. Doesn't necessarily join them. Just kind of says, "I'm now part of your team because I want a place to stay."
Right.
Let's see. There was a Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. series that started, and I read the lead into this, which I wasn't all that big on, because they did this...
Nick Fury versus S.H.I.E.L.D., right?
Yeah. I couldn't get into it, but I was reading some of the 60s Nick Fury stuff, and I really want to like a Nick Fury series. So I'm going to give this one a shot a little bit later, but I don't know, have you checked out any of his any of this series?
No, I have not.
Damn.
Sorry.
All right. Well, how well versed are you in Marvel's new universe?
I read Spitfire. That's the only one that I read. The one that was kind of like Iron Man.
Okay. Well, apparently, I haven't read this. I have read the attempt to bring it back when they tried to relaunch it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But from my stand, New Universe sucked, and they ended up capping it off in '89 with The War, which basically was like a big war, and I guess everybody died or something. I could have read more about it, but it was New Universe, and I don't think it had a big fan base.
Yeah, it's no. I read Starbrand later, but at the time I only read Spitfire and the Troublemakers. Trying to remember all of them. There was Strike Force Moritari, I think, was one of them, or something. The one guy, he was like a Punisher robot. All the characters were just knockoffs of someone that was popular. Like Starbrand was like Quasar, and they just wanted their whole new universe, obviously because of the name, but where they weren't tied down to continuity, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, and that's always been the problem with trying to start with new things. Hell, even the Ultimate Marvel stuff, where it's, okay, we have a brand new world, no continuity you have to worry about. And then as you start writing stories, you start having to build continuity.
Yeah, and it's just a pain in the ass.
And in some cases, having to build, your whole history now. And that's always where starting this stuff. You can't start it up, truly at square one. It never works. But the last few things, I'll just read off a couple of quick little things. 2 villains debuted. The Ghost Rider villain Blackheart actually debuted in Daredevil 270. The Assassin Crossbones ended up in Captain America 359. And then there was a couple of new series that I never really paid too much attention to, but Quasar, you mentioned, the Monica Rambeau Captain Marvel series, and Mark Spector Moon Knight.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the Captain Marvel one, but I definitely remember reading the Moon Knight, and the Quasar is actually really good. No one ever mentions it, but it's really solid.
I've yet to get into the Marvel space stuff.
Yeah.
With the exception of the more recent, well, I don't think more recent, like starting off with Bendis's run on Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's only like some of those series I've been able to do, but trying to go back hasn't really worked for me.
The Annihilation series is where I started caring about the space stuff.
Yeah, that one I can imagine being a huge headache of a storyline. That's
a bit, but I was already kind of knowledgeable on what was going on with them anyway, so I kind of knew what to expect.
But it's but stuff like the Infinity Gauntlet crossover. Then you had that one was fine, and then I tried to read Infinity War, and that was incomprehensible. Like I just could not understand it, and it's like, oh, but you're also going to have to read 4 other series along with it, because even though we're going to make sure that important events don't just happen in here, but you have to read, Warlock in the Infinity Crusade, and then you have to read this one panel in, I don't know, actually Alpha Flight or something. It's like, oh, by the way, this is important, but we're not going to tell you that unless you actually go and read it or look up a Wikipedia entry. But yeah, it's like there's some of these things I've been since I got Marvel Unlimited, I've been popping up some of these things to check out. So
yeah, it's nice that you can check stuff out there for a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it's definitely worth my investment. What do we have time to get into? Not indie, but a little bit of Japanese stuff.
Sure, go ahead. I don't care. It's fine.
Okay, got 2 little things. One, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but because it's tangentially comics. Dragon Ball Z leapt off the pages of Shonen Jump and onto TVs. It's the biggest anime series of all time. Or not? Yeah, I guess it is the biggest. I dug it when I saw it in high school, but around that time is when it also started making its way overseas to here. And once other people started to like it, it really lost its appeal because the people who started to like it were kind of douchebaggy. and let's be honest, there's a lot of nice people who like DBZ. There's also a lot of milady types, fedora wearing neckbeard motherfuckers. And
I didn't know what you were talking about at first. Like, milady, what are you talking about, weirdo?
Yeah, these there's a lot of people who truly seem to love this series and are like the biggest fucking asshats. So it was fun while it lasted. But now this one is a little bit sad, but in '89 Osamu Tezuka died. He's basically the father of manga.
Uh-huh.
He was the creator of Astro Boy. It's also the series Blackjack and a lot of other things. But it's like, while Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli have been called the Disney of Japan, really, if you're going to compare anyone to Walt Disney, it is Tezuka. He did, so much family-friendly stuff that when it got animated, we still kind of know. Like I said, Astro Boy is still fairly recognizable. You might recognize Kimba the White Lion, the story that was kind of stolen parts of and brought into The Lion King. He doesn't have a huge thing of works, but he's got works that basically went for decades. Like the one thing that he felt was his life's work was a series called The Phoenix, which basically went unfinished because he died.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, well, I mean, it started in like the 50s. And
okay.
So there are 12 volumes of this thing. I've read a little bit of it when I was working at B. Dalton. I don't recall liking it, but I do also know, like, I'm with like a 90%, 80 to 90% certainty that the film adaptation of one of those volumes called Phoenix 2772, I'm pretty sure I've seen that. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I looked up, I'm looking up on Wikipedia, reading the thing going, that sounds so familiar. But it's very space-oriented, and I don't have it written down, so I can't tell you what it is. But, yeah, this is a guy who basically, in Japan, pioneered a lot of what we recognize now. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely worth, again, giving him his props, because there are very few masters that people can point out in anime, and he's definitely one of them.
That's it?
For me. That is it for me.
All right, so that's the end of this episode. Check us out on Facebook under Hit Rewind, and we'll be back soon, sometime with 1990. I said soon, forgetting that I want to kind of take some time off. So I said I won't start again until January, but I know myself well enough to know that I won't be able to sit still for very long, so we'll probably be back in like October or something.
Yeah, some time off is better than not taking it and getting burned out.
Yeah. All right, so that is it. Have a good night.
Later, guys.